Blog Talk Radio.
This is activist minister Omar Wilks. Welcome to Unison Global Talk. Now is the time to buckle your seatbelts and get ready for a mind flight. Welcome back to Unison Global Talk this Friday at 11 a.m. I ask that you invite your friends to tune in to this program that is determined to give you substantive food for thought. Today is the second part of a three-part interview with veteran civil rights leader, Reverend C. Herbert Oliver. And we are grateful that he has taken the time out of his schedule to be here today for Unison Global Talk to discuss the words and vision of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. We will later on in the program play a speech given by Dr. King during a pivotal time of the Civil Rights Movement. Please have your tape recorders ready to record what you will hear today, and please share it with other people. Because the challenge is not to keep things to ourselves, but to share the information we have with other people. You play a very important role in this ongoing movement to bring about substantive change in society. No matter how much you have, always remember this, listening audience, it's not about how much you have or how little you have, but I want you to know that no matter how much you have or how little you have, everyone has something to give. And sometimes it's not about money. It's not about giving money, but just giving your time, just taking time to listen. Take time out of your busy schedule to listen, to call somebody, to let them know that Unison Global Talk is on the air, and we have a very special program today. And Dr. Martin Luther King once said, everyone can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. I ask you to call into this program today, call into Unison Global Talk, because we want to hear what you have to say. And our guest speaker would like to answer your questions because he has a lot of valuable information to share today. The number is 347. The number to Unison Global Talk is 347-994-1262. Let me repeat that one more time. 347-994-1262. In the program today, we will be discussing and analyzing the words and vision of Dr. King. We will also play a speech of his that has been hidden in the archives because, many people that don't mean our community well hide information away from us. And I think it was Malcolm X who once said, if you want to keep something away from our people, the black people, is to put it in the book. So many of those that don't mean our community well have hidden this information. It's out there, but it's hidden in archives, and you really have to search really hard to find this information. And this speech that you will hear today is likely something that you've never heard. So you're in for a rare opportunity to get a lot of food for thought today with the words of Dr. King. Reverend Oliver, who has been on the front line of the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s, is still on the cutting edge of pressing issues of today. This veteran clergyman, civil rights pioneer leader, has never lost his passion to speak truth to power. He helped lay the groundwork for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to come into Birmingham before all of the history we hear about what happened in the Civil Rights Movement in Birmingham. Reverend C. Herbert Oliver was on the scene, along with other clergymen like Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, to lay the groundwork for Dr. Martin Luther King to come in. And he, as I mentioned, he actively worked with trailblazers for justice like Reverend Shuttlesworth. I'd like to bring on, at this time, Reverend C. Herbert Oliver.
Thank you, Reverend Wilks.
How are you doing?
Thank you, Reverend Wilks. I appreciate that invitation and that introduction, and I appreciate your making it possible for this DVD to be heard on the computer, and I appreciate that very much. I've had this for many years, since 1963, but there's not been too much interest in it, but I'm glad that you showed interest enough to make this available to the public. This is a tape that was made on the night of May 3rd, 1963, after the police had put in Birmingham, Alabama, had put fire hoses and dogs upon peaceful protesters. The meeting was held at the 16th Street Baptist Church, and all of the leaders of the Civil Rights Movement were there. Dr. King, Reverend Shuttlesworth, Ralph Abernathy, Y.T. Walker, Andy Young, James Bevel, and others were all there. The church was jam-packed, inside and out. I would say there were at least about 3,000 people all together, and the news media was there. They were there with all of their cameras, and they were there to hear what Dr. King would say after such a terrible day of dogs and fire hoses. So he was on the spot. And to see Dr. King in action is very wonderful indeed, but when you hear this tape, you will see the pressure that was on him, and you will see how he handled it. And if you're able to record this, you will do yourself a favor to record it and hear it again and again. So now I'm going to play this tape. I taped it on my tape recorder, and the press also has this information. It's locked away, but they have this speech of Dr. King, but you no doubt have never heard this one before. So this is history that you are about to hear. So I will now play this tape for you now. If you will hold just a second, we will get it.
Thank you, my dear friends and fellow citizens of Birmingham, Alabama. At points, today was a dark day in Birmingham. The policemen were mean to us. They got their violent, angry dogs and turned them loose on non-violent, peaceful, unarmed people. But not only that, they got their water system working. And here and there we saw the water holes with water pouring on young boys and girls, old men and women, with great and staggering force. Birmingham was a mean city today. But in spite of the meanness of Birmingham, we must confront her with our kindness and our goodness and our determination to be nonviolent. As difficult as it is, we must meet hate with love. As hard as it is, we must meet physical force with soul force. And let us just keep going down the path of nonviolence, because somebody must have sense in this world. The reason I can't advocate violence is because violence ultimately defeats itself. It ultimately destroys everybody. The reason I can't follow the old eye for an eye philosophy is that it ends up leaving everybody blind. Somebody must have sense, and somebody must have religion. I remember some years ago, my brother and I were driving from Atlanta to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And for some reason, the drivers that night were very discourteous, or they were forgetting to dim their lights. And every time we passed a car, for some reason, the lights stood there with all of their force. And finally, A.D. looked over to me and he said, "I'm tired of this now, and the next car that comes by here and refuses to dim the lights, I'm going to refuse to dim mine." And I said, "Wait a minute, don't do that. Somebody has to have some sense on this highway, and if somebody doesn't have sense enough to dim the lights, we'll all end up destroyed on this highway." And I'm saying the same thing for us here in Birmingham. We are moving up a mighty highway toward the city of freedom. There will be meandering points. There will be curves and difficult moments. And we will be tempted to retaliate with the same kind of force that the opposition will use. But I'm going to say to you, wait a minute, Birmingham. Somebody's got to have some sense in Birmingham. And we are the ones that must prove to be the spiritual anvil that will wear out many a physical hammer. This is what we can do right here in Birmingham. Just let them get their dogs and let them get the holes, and we will leave them gutted with their own barbarity. We will leave them standing before their God, and the world spotted with the blood and reeking with the stench of their Negro brothers. Then they will have to say, we're going to have to bring an end to our excesses, but this can't stop these people. We tried to use water on them, and we soon discovered that they were used to water, for they were Methodists or Episcopalians or other denominations, and they had and even those who had been sprinkled happened to have been Baptists, and not only did they stand up in the water, they went under the water. And dogs, well, I tell you, when I was growing up, I was dog-bitten for nothing. So I don't mind being bitten by a dog for standing up for freedom. I was down in going to court the other day when we were in jail, and they took us into the city hall for court underground. And I looked over there and saw a tank. A tank was sitting over there, and I didn't know what. I said, "What is that?" Somebody said, "Well, That's Bull Carter's tank, and you know it's a white tank. They can bring their dogs out, they can get their water, and even Bull Corner can get his white tank, and our black faces will stand up before the white tank. Now, we're not alone in this. Don't let anybody make you feel that we're alone. That's right. That's right. Already we have the support of friends from all over the country. If you listened this afternoon to the Huntley-Brinkley program, you saw three distinguished leaders from Washington saying that they were calling for a pilgrimage to Birmingham, Alabama. They are coming here. They're coming here by the busloads to aid us in this struggle. Now, yesterday was D-Day. And tomorrow will be double D-Day. Now, briefly, I want to tell you what we're asking for, because we need to know this. We need to know the things that we are requesting, so that these things will be in our minds over and over again. Number one, we are asking the merchants to desegregate all of the facilities in the stores downtown and over the city. The lunch counter, the restrooms, the water fountains, and the fitting room. We are requesting that desegregation will take place in these stores. Now, you know, for a long, long time, you have been shopping and you've been spending big money at times in these stores. And yet you can't even get a cup of coffee at a lunch counter. You look across the seas and you see the men and women of the nations of Asia and Africa moving with jet-like speed toward political independence, and we are still moving at horse and buggy pace trying to get service at a lunch counter. Now, this is nothing unusual. We are not asking for anything extreme. Since the sit-in movement started in 1960, more than 210 cities have integrated their lunch counters. You've had some in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, for instance. And Birmingham must face the realities of life, and we've got to get it over to the officials of this community that when they stand up against integration, it is like standing up on the beaches of history trying to hold the tides back. It just isn't possible. So we're trying to end segregation. Now, the other thing we must see is this. The second thing is this. We are tired of Negroes being employed only in menial areas. We are tired of Negroes only being employed to sweep floors in the stores downtown. Did you know, you should know, that the annual income of the average Negro family in Birmingham, Alabama is 50% less than the average white family. The average Negro family makes just a little above $2,000. The average white family earns an average of $4,854. am here to say to you tonight that we are God's children and that we deserve the opportunity to have jobs that are decent like anybody else. We are making it clear now that we are not going to spend our money anywhere that we can't get jobs on an equal basis. So you see, we are simply asking that they will upgrade Negroes and give them some jobs that will pay well, and that will be an expression of our various abilities. Third, we're urging them to recommend to the city government that they will drop the charges against all of these people who have been arrested for only seeking their constitutional rights. We don't live in Russia. We don't believe in communism. We don't believe in a system of government which says that the state is the end. The great glory of democracy the great glory of democracy is the right to protest for rights. Embedded deep down in the Constitution of our nation in the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly. We lived in Russia, we would understand all this mess they're carrying on down in Birmingham, Alabama. But we live in the United States. Somewhere it is said to us that all of us have certain rights that are neither derived from nor conferred by the state. In order to discover where they came from, it is necessary to move back behind the dim mist of eternity. They are God-given. This is what we do. Organized labor demonstrated over and over again our right to picket, and yet in Birmingham, Alabama, we can't picket. We can't engage in an orderly nonviolent protest. But our rights, our basic constitutional rights. But we believe in democracy. We are devoted to democracy. We love America and we love democracy. And while we are struggling down here in Birmingham, we are struggling not to save ourselves alone, but we are struggling to save the soul of this nation. And so we are telling them to urge the city government to drop these charges. And fourth, we're asking them to appoint a good faith biracial committee. I say good faith because too many biracial committees are nothing but window dressing committees. Now we passed the state now where white people in the power structure can pick our leaders. We don't want any leaders that they're going to pick. The Negroes who are to be represented on this biracial committee must be selected by the Negroes and approved by the nation. This committee is to deal with the question of a timetable for integrating the schools. Several years ago, the Supreme Court rendered a decision outlawing segregation in the public schools. That Brown decision said in substance that separate facilities are inherently unequal, and to segregate a child on the basis of his race is to deny that child equal protection of the law. And then in 1955, it rendered its implementation decision, and it said that every community was to work under the scrutiny of the local federal judge and move with all deliberate speed toward implementing it. Alabama hadn't even started moving forward. She must let on about all deliberate speed. She hadn't even developed an all deliberate cause. And now that something must be done about school integration. Now, the parks, they're closed. All over the city. Samuel Johnson said once that parks are the lungs of a city, and it's high time that Birmingham would start breathing again. It's time for these parks to open, and we want this committee to deal with that and all of the other problems of segregation. Now, these are the four things. Keep them in your mind. They're very simple. Desegregating all the facilities, upgrading Negroes and employment in the stores, the dropping of the charges, and the appointment of a good faith biracial committee. Now, there isn't anything extreme about this. These are things that we should have had 100 years ago. Now, finally, your children and your daughters and sons are in jail, many of them. And I'm sure many of the parents are here tonight. Don't worry about them. They are suffering for what they believe, and they're suffering to make this nation a better nation. And you see the eyes of the world on Birmingham, and I'm not saying that they want to treat them so nice, but they have to treat them nice. You see, they are political prisoners. And it's a little different when you are a political prisoner. See, they're not in there for being drunk. They are not in there for stealing some chicken. They are not in there for embezzlement. They are political prisoners, and a little different. And we are going to keep in touch with the jails, and we're going to see that they are treated right. I've been in jail about 13 times in this struggle, and every time I go, it's a new spiritual experience. You can get a lot of things done that you need to do, and you can't get done in the hurly-burly of everyday life. Jail helps you to rise above the miasma of everyday life. You can think about things. You can meditate a little. You can read a little. If they want some books, we would get them. I catch up on my reading every time I go to jail. I have a book that is just being published. It is, the publication date is June the 5th, but they sent me a copy yesterday, a day before, stating that this was the first copy that they had printed, and I looked in it and I started reading the preface, and I thought about the fact that I had written in this preface several months ago something that was a real experience. And that was the fact that 3 chapters in this book, 3 of the sermons in this book were written in the Albany, Georgia jail. So if they put me in jail again in Birmingham, I'll have time to write another book. Don't worry about jail, for when you go in jail for a cause like this, the jail cease to be jail. They become havens of freedom and human dignity. And so we need everybody. We need your support. And we're going on in spite of the dogs, in spite of the holes, in spite of the tanks. We can't stop now. We've gone too far to turn back. Somebody here tonight is still standing in the valley of decision. We need your support. We need you in this movement. And I hope that every Negro citizen of this city and every white person of goodwill will join in this movement as we move on to democratize Birmingham and to make this nation a better place in which to live. I ask you to decide now, not tomorrow, not later on tonight, but I urge you to decide at this minute, remembering a tiny little minute, just 60 seconds in it. I didn't choose it. I can't refuse it. It's up to me to use it, a tiny little minute, just 60 seconds in it, but eternity is in it. God, let us use the moment.
end of Dr. King's speech, and as you can see, it was a very, very moving, very timely, and a speech that he stayed right with the concept of nonviolence, but it was not a type that would run away and be afraid to act, as you heard him say. Yesterday was D-Day. Tomorrow will be double D-Day.
Wow. Reverend Oliver,
yes.
I just want to quickly say, for those who have questions about what they just heard, please call into Unison Global Talk at 347-994-1262, 347-994-1262. We have veteran civil rights leader, Reverend C. Herbert Oliver, on the line to answer questions, any questions that you may have. Feel free to call in. Let me give that number one more time, 347-994-1262. And one of the things I just want to quickly mention, I just want to read something really brief before we go into further analyze Dr. King and what took place at this location where he just gave this speech. And I think this is very fitting to add this in there. It's written by Coretta Scott King, and I just want to briefly just read a little bit. She says, "My husband, Martin Luther King, Jr., was a man who had hoped to be a Baptist preacher to a large southern urban congregation. Instead, by the time he died in 1968, he led millions of people into shattering forever the southern system of segregation of the races. He had fashioned a mass black electorate that eliminated overt racism from political campaigns and accumulated political power for blacks beyond any they had ever possessed in the United States. Above all, he brought a new, higher dimension of human dignity to black people's lives. I met Martin in Boston in 1952 when he was 23 years old. I had grown up in rural Alabama, attended Antioch College in Ohio, and was studying music at the New England Conservatory. Martin was working toward a Doctor of Philosophy degree at Boston University. Before coming to Boston, Martin had earned a BA in sociology in Morehouse College in Atlanta and a BD at Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. His father, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Sr., a sharecropper's son, was a pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. His mother, Alberta Williams King, was a minister's daughter. The reason why I read that, Reverend Oliver, because Dr. King, he could have been anything he really wanted to be. You know, he came out of a family that was not in extreme poverty, you know, and he had access. He had his college degrees, and he could have been a doctor, a lawyer. He could have, you know, became a profit maker for self. But he decided to commit his life to a greater cause. What is it, Reverend Oliver, that causes an individual to make that kind of sacrifice? What is it? What does it take that inspired Dr. King and others like yourself, you know, to give your life to a greater cause? What is it, would you say?
Well, I would say that he must have experienced in his own heart and soul a call to the ministry, something that he was impelled to do by his caller, the Creator. And when one has that calling, then everything else becomes secondary, and one must fulfill that calling. So I think he did have a call to the ministry to serve God, and that's what he decided to prepare himself for in his studies after college and going to the various schools that he went to. He decided to get the training that would best fit him for serving Christ in his church and Christ's church. But I think the call, basically the call was the determining factor. It certainly was the determining factor for me. I did not wish to go into the ministry. I really hated the thought of it, but I couldn't get away from it. And for months and months, I strove and I tried to get away from anything like the ministry. This did not appeal to me. But I couldn't get any peace of mind until after many months, maybe more than a year, I finally, in my mind, I seemed to say to God, all right, I'll be a minister. And I decided that I would go into the ministry, and then that unrest went away, and I never have felt that unrest again. So that, to me, is what I consider my own call. I couldn't get peace until I said yes to a call to serve God. And when I made that decision, then peace came, and that peace has never left me.
Wow. Reverend Oliver, at this, as you sat there when Dr. King gave the speech, and you were actually there, what were you thinking as you sat there and you heard the speech? What was going through your mind?
Well, I was really concentrating on seeing that my Wallenstock tape recorder got everything correctly. So I was making sure that that I got this speech. I was aware, not then, but afterwards, I realized that the news media were all there and all getting his speech down. And so I was glad that I was at least getting an audio of it, though I've never seen the video of it or anything on that the rest of the press has in their archives. They've never played this speech. They've never let the world know that a speech like this existed. They've taken Dr. Martin Luther King's speech on Washington and carved it up to make it useful to them so that he would direct us in paths that they wanted us to go, but they left out the blank check that America gave to blacks and other things they left out. So I was glad to at least have this audio, and I've kept it, and I've tried to share it around. Not too much interest in it nowadays because people seem to think that Montgomery was where everything happened. But this was in Birmingham, Alabama, with Dr. King and Dr. Shuttlesworth and others, challenging segregation at its very heart.
From what I'm hearing, it sounds like, there's a lot more information that has never been heard before. That's hidden
right.
Deep in the archives. And I wonder, what would it take to get this very valuable information? What do people have to do to get these very great pieces of information out of hidden from the dungeons of these news agencies? What do you think needs to be done, Reverend Oliver?
Well, I look at our people first of all because I have over the years I have spoken to many people and even shared this tape as well as a speech by Ralph Abernathy, but no one has yet asked me to come and make a presentation and show these, and play these speeches and explain what they were to you. I haven't gotten that invitation yet from blacks. So I must say that yours is the first time that I've been able to air this on something that's near to the radio. So we've got all kind of radio people, but I haven't been able to find anyone who is interested enough to share this history with the people. And this is very basic history, as you will hear next week when Ralph Abernathy really brought the house down with his speech. So I'm glad I was there, and I'm glad I recorded it.
Reverend Oliver, what was the social climate between the black community and Bull Connor? What methods have you seen Bull Connor use to instill fear in the black community?
Brutalizing and killing blacks was normal under Bull Connor. I must say that even it was not on the same regular basis as it is here in New York City. I must say New York City is worse now than Birmingham ever was. I've lived, grew up in Birmingham, and I've lived in New York City now for 45 years, and all of the killings and shootings that have gone on here surpassed Birmingham. But blacks, or Negroes, as we were called then, knew that there were certain places they were not to go. They had separate living quarters or separate places to shop and eat. Segregation was very, very rigid, and that's how we grew up. But there came a time when blacks had a better understanding of themselves. Some 30 or 40 years of teaching Negro history in the schools gave blacks a sense of worth, and it reached a point in Birmingham when blacks said, no, we are not taking this anymore. We are humans. We are people. We're going to stand up for our rights. And they did.
Wow. Reverend Oliver, there's, what I find oftentimes, like doing community organizing, people often judge success based on the quantity of people present. And, when people look back on history books, they get the impression that it was the overall masses that was following Dr. King and the masses of clergy. The question I have is, we hear many stories about the challenges Dr. King had with the clergy. You, as a person who actively worked with Dr. King, what challenges did you see that he had with clergy and other organizations?
Well, he did have challenges with the clergy. When he first came to Birmingham, he had not touched base with Reverend J.L. Ware, the head of the Baptist Ministers Conference there in Birmingham. J.L. Ware was a minister outstanding minister in Birmingham, well respected, very much involved in the Freedom Train that came through bringing the Freedom Riders. But when Shuttlesworth came on the scene, Reverend Ware seemed to move more into the background, but he didn't disappear. But he still remained a leader. But the two of them were not working together. And when King came to Birmingham, he came at the invitation of Reverend Shuttlesworth, not Reverend Ware. Reverend Shuttlesworth had a following of about a dozen ministers, some with large, some with small churches, but about a dozen. But there were many, many more. That was only maybe 10% of the clergy in Birmingham. The rest of the Baptist clergy were linked with Reverend J.L. Ware, and they had not received word from him to get involved. And King realized this, and he made an arrangement to speak to the black Baptist ministers in Birmingham. And when Reverend Ware knew about this, he called me, and he invited him to come, but he called me and asked me to be there because I was on a friendly basis with Reverend Ware. And I was there. And Dr. King was presented, and he made about a 10-minute presentation and asked for the support of the Baptist clergy. And after he finished, Reverend Ware gave his approval and said that we're supporting you, we're with you. And then John Cross, the minister of the 16th Street Baptist Church, made a brief speech and said, basically, we are with you, we are supporting you. And other ministers spoke to the same. And Reverend Ware put it to a vote, and it was unanimous that the black Baptist ministers under Ware's leadership were now behind the movement. This was 2 weeks after the movement, after the demonstrations had begun. But they floundered for 2 weeks people were not out in the streets. They just were not there. And I think the reason was that Reverend Ware's clergy, the Baptist clergy, had not been brought into the whole process. But after that was done, then the streets were filled with people because the ministers put the word out, and they were there and supportive of Dr. King, and from then on, it's history. The masses of Birmingham came out and supported Dr. King in jail or out of jail, but they were there to support him completely.
Reverend Oliver, from what you personally saw of Dr. King, how far was he willing to take the philosophy of nonviolence? And was this a new idea that came on the scene in the South?
Well, yes, it was a new idea in the South. Blacks weren't used to just being nonviolent. They could be violent and defend themselves, and did defend themselves many, many times. But that concept was something new, but Dr. King pushed this, and he pushed it all the way. I remember riding with him on a trip from Birmingham to Talladega, where he was a guest speaker, and we discussed nonviolence on the way. And I asked him point blank if his family, if his wife and children were being attacked in his presence, would he remain nonviolent? And to my surprise, he said yes, he would. He would remain nonviolent. And I was shocked, but I said, well, this man he really means what he says. I'm not that nonviolent. I cannot stand by, or I could not stand by and watch my wife or children being attacked. I'm coming in, and you got to take us out. But I couldn't do that. But I did give him the credit for that, and I do think that he really meant that. He was sincere. He would remain nonviolent, and he did remain nonviolent throughout all of the violence of the police in Birmingham. He continued to press the people to nonviolence. Now, there was a time when the motel was bombed, and then blacks rioted that night. And they threw stones at cars, and it was a riot. But Dr. King was able to try to calm that down and get people not to do that. But that was a natural response. They attempted to kill Dr. King, and so the people just simply rose up in violence, and there was a night of violence. But that was the only time that violence under Dr. King broke out, and he was able to stop that so it didn't continue any further.
You know what it seems like, Reverend Oliver? Once when we get deep into this history, it seems like time just decides to speed up. You know, I don't know what's behind that. So I don't want to waste I don't want to waste too much time just talking about what I gotta say. You know, you have to say is what's extremely important. And within the last 5 minutes of Unison Global Talk today, I have two important questions. Is you mentioned that how far he was willing to go for his philosophy and everything. Was he even willing to not even listen to his close comrades when he really believed in the principle? For example, when he decided to challenge the war in Vietnam and everything, and how far was he willing to go, even when it came to his own the people who he knew and who he had disagreements with?
Well, I think
in terms of Vietnam.
Well, in terms of his staff, I think everyone knew that he was deeply committed, totally committed to nonviolence. So I don't think anyone would try to get him away from that. However, in his position toward the war in Vietnam, that was a violent war, and a war that was not declared, and many men, women, and children were being killed daily in that war. And we had so much that needed to be done here on the home front to make life livable for the citizens here in this country. And I don't know what was going on in his head, but he came to the position that he had to take a stand against the violence that this country is inflicting on people of other nations without their being asked to accept it or being brought into or being war declared on them. So I think he just came to believe that his struggle for nonviolence had to address itself to the violence of the United States of America. If he's going to ask black to be nonviolent, then he also has to ask this nation to be nonviolent and to cease its violence in Vietnam and wherever they were carrying on the violence of this country. So I think it was part of his philosophy that it extended to.
Reverend Oliver.
Yes.
What would have been his position today? You know, even though we have a black president in office, and what would probably be his position? Iraq.
What would, say that again? I missed something.
What would be Dr. King's position in regards to the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq?
I think he would be opposed to both of them. That's my feeling, that he would be, as opposed to, if he was opposed to the war in Vietnam, then he would be more so opposed to the war in Iraq and Afghanistan.
And the last question I have is, why is he celebrated in death more than he was celebrated in life?
In life, I think he was more hated because people wished him dead. Many of the white segregationists wished him dead. They wished that something would be done to get this man out of the way, get him off of the scene, because everywhere he went, he was able to get people to get into the streets and demonstrate. And this placed a hard burden on the police system of whatever city he went to. The police did not ever want to see him come because that meant they had so much more work to do dealing with people out in the streets, and anything can happen out in the streets. So they had to quickly gear themselves up whenever they knew that Dr. King was coming to town. That meant that they had a lot of work to do, and they just didn't like that, and many just wished he would disappear. Many of the things that he said sounded radical. However, after he passed on and people looked back to see what he was saying, he was only saying things that they should have been happy to hear. And now people are happy to hear him say all of those things now. But when he was alive, they just couldn't stand hearing them.
Another question I have is, I just can't get enough. I thought that was going to be my last question. And now I have to follow up with another one.
Okay.
And, the question I have, Reverend Oliver, is when it came to leaders like Malcolm X and everything, oftentimes, those who try to write our story try to make it look like, many of our leaders were completely at odds with one another and everything. From what I hear is that Dr. King and Malcolm X had a lot more in common than what's told and everything.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, that is true. When Dr. King was in Selma, Alabama, Malcolm X came there, and he made a speech saying that they need to keep Dr. King in jail because now I can make my demands. And his demands would be a lot stronger than what Dr. King's was. And I'm told, or I've heard, that when the police chief heard that, he went and got Martin Luther King out of jail and got him away because he didn't want to create a scene for Malcolm X to take advantage of. So they were moving closer to each other, I think, in the struggle, and I think that would have been a fearful combination if the forces that followed Malcolm could unite with the forces that followed Dr. King. That would make a very strong combination and very, very hard to deal with.
Reverend Oliver, I want to say I appreciate this information and the recording you brought before us today. I know that our listening audience are greatly appreciative as well. We look forward to part 3 You're welcome. Part 3 of our interview with you, where we will be playing a recording of Ralph Abernathy, another speech that hasn't been really heard out there in our community. And I look forward to this program. And I ask people who are listening to please bring your tape recorders. Please email blast this broadcast so that others can hear it. We will be back on the air on Friday at 11 a.m.
Could I just break in and say that they've never heard this speech of Dr. Abernathy. They need to hear it. So please be there next Friday at 11 o'clock.
Reverend Oliver, thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. God bless you.
Thank you, and God bless you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I just want to say, everybody, let's tune in next week. On Friday, you're in for another special episode of Unison Global Talk. Stay on the front lines, and I just want to leave you with the words of Frederick Douglass. Not lose hope. Continue the struggle. Things look bad today, but time will fight our battles. Every day, our numbers grow. These will speak for us. These are that Frederick Douglass talked about. He was talking about you. Let's stay in unison. God bless you.